I got the assignment in the A-26. It was my second tour in Vietnam. I came out of pilot training from Del Rio out at Laughlin Air Force Base and basically volunteered to get something going to Vietnam right away so I could get some time in the combat. I got the Caribou assignment and went over and I asked for any fighter for a second tour, and personnel gave me a Caribou instructor job back in the United States. So I, being a lieutenant, not knowing any different, wrote director of personnel and sent him a letter saying, hey, I've been over here for a year in combat. I'd like to come back for a second tour in any fighter. And if you don't see fit to put me on a fighter because I don't have jet time, then I'd like to get an A-26, which I hear over here, and it's a propeller airplane. So I have experience. I got 1,000 hours of combat time in the Caribou, so that should work. And so about 2 weeks later, I got a letter back from personnel, and they had reassigned me to the A-26 squadron down at England Air Force Base to get checked out and then return after that for a second tour. Yeah, when I first got to England Air Force Base, I basically had a letter from personnel that said I was going there to the A-26. And so I went into the squadron commander and said, I'm here ready for training. And he said, well, it may not work out because at England Air Force Base they had both C-47 training and A-26 training. And he said, we've been tasked to send a pilot down to the C-47 training, and you're the new kid on the block, so you may go. And so I said, well, I really don't think you ought to do that to me, but anyway, he said, check with me tomorrow. And so I went back in the next day and said, what's the verdict? And he said, well, you can stay. I found a guy who had some C-47 time, so I sent him down to the C-47 training. So I was able to stay in the A-26. When we first showed up at England for the squadron, we had about, I believe it was 8 guys in our class, and it was a mixture of pilots and navigators. And so we were as a group together, and we started out with academics, basic academics and so forth on the airplane systems and so forth. And then sometime during the training, they asked us to pair ourselves up between pilot and navigator for flying. And Bruce Gustafson and I, just for some reason, during our classroom work and being together as a class, he and I just really clicked. I was a lieutenant and he was a captain, but for some reason the two of us just realized that we wanted to be together, and so we each selected the other one to be paired up with. Now, most of our training there at England Air Force Base was with instructors. The navigators had a pilot instructor or instructor nav, and then the pilots, we all had the instructors with us for the flying part. But they did pair us up for some cross-country flights to, and other, maybe we had a couple other flights as a team to learn how to work the fuel system, because it had, we had 5 hours fuel on board, and the navigators had to learn how to work the fuel system. And so we had to do one 5-hour cross country where they could, or thereabouts, so they could get used to moving the fuel around. And I know we flew from England Air Force Base to back to Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, where my folks lived, and we went back there for a weekend for our cross country to get the fuel system checked out. As far as paired up together in the flights that we did, it's hard to remember. I'd have to talk to Gus and find out exactly how we did it at the end, but I'm guessing that we did have a couple of flights there together as a team to work together as a crew, dropping bombs and going to the range. But I'd have to check with him to see how it was, because we didn't link. He came to Confinement before I did. He got there first, and then it was a little later that I got there. And he had already had his checkout there when I got there, and so I got my checkout. Then we paired up again. As far as dropping live, I'm pretty sure we did drop live. It would be standard practice at an RTU to do that, to drop live munitions. Now, how much and what we did, I'm not really sure. I know we strafed and we dropped the blue practice bombs, but I'm sure we dropped some live 500-pounders during training. Going from RTU to getting to Vietnam or to Thailand, NKP, you were pretty much on your own. You had orders to go over, and pretty much the same way when I went the first time to Vietnam. You showed up at Travis Air Force Base in California, and they had you on a commercial flight, World Airways or somebody who was carrying all charter people to Vietnam or Southeast Asia. And so you got a ticket and you got on board and you showed up in country. Going to NKP, we went into Bangkok, and there was a C-130 that did a shuttle around Thailand and went to the different bases. And so you just got on that shuttle when it was convenient or when you had a seat available, and flew up to NKP and got off. And that's where Gus met me at when I got off the airplane there. But you just pretty much showed up as an individual and got to the squadron the best way you could. When we first got to the squadron, obviously squadron commander was one of the first people you met, and you got all your equipment, so forth, from PE, and got all squared away with your flying gear. And then you had somebody sponsor, who in this case was my navigator because he was already there, showed you around the base, where we live, where the club was, and so forth, and introduce you to the other guys, because we only flew at night. So you would meet them at breakfast or at dinner, because those were two of the main meals that we would have over there. And just around, we had a squadron if you want to call it a party building. It was a building that they had built separate from our trailers that we lived in, and that's where we socialized and played darts and just kind of hung out together. And so you met them around the hooch there as far as getting to know them. The checkout, when you first got there, they gave you a $1 ride with on either a 123 or an A1 Sky Raider to go out and at least see what it was like flying over Laos and over the trail. And you either get 1 or 2 rides doing that to orient yourself with the delta points and the places where you would go. And then your first ride was with an instructor, and maybe the first ride or 2 were with the instructor until he felt comfortable that you could obviously fly the airplane and then go out and be the number 2 man on the flight. We did all 2-ship formations at night. And so then he would sign you off, and then after that, then you paired up with your navigator, and you pretty much flew together as a team. But there were flights where either if you weren't there or were training or something, or they needed a navigator to go with another pilot, experienced navigator with a new pilot or something, then he would fly with another pilot, or I would fly with a different navigator. But very seldom would that happen. We pretty much flew together the whole time. But once you got your checkout, then you were clear to fly as number 2. Our tactics were 2-ship night. We would go out, take off. We would fly a loose formation to get to the target area. I think the closest I ever had a target to NKP was 60 or 65 miles. Of course, we take off out of NKP and you turn over the Mekong River, you're in Laos, so anywhere was fair game, I guess. Area was divided. Laos was divided into Steel Tiger, which was down south, and Barrel Roll, which was up north. The missions mostly in Steel Tiger were interdicting the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Truck parks, anything the forward air controllers had for you down that way as far as stopping the flow of supplies into South Vietnam. Barrel Roll up north was the same, but you also would get involved maybe with troops in contact. Laotian troops that were loyal to the U.S. Fighting the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese in northern Laos, or Air America people that needed some support at their bases. So you had a chance to do a little troops in contact support up there.